All right, we're on with the most interesting fella of all time.
Yes, and then Josh and Rhett.
Yeah. John, thank you so much for being with us.
Do it again.
I do like your haircut.
Pretty sweet.
It's pretty sweet. Once this guy gives it up, it'll be pretty good.
Once he admits,
Yeah. He's still got it pretty good. You
I
notice
don't
how
know.
much his earning potential has gone up since he got the beard?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 615 podcast. If you haven't yet, please go on, like, subscribe, share, make stupid comments. It helps a lot.
All right, Rhett Mayer.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. How are you?
Good.
Thanks for coming on, buddy.
Thank you, fella.
We've been talking it for a while now, but just haven't done it.
I know. It's been nice to see you boys tonight.
Yeah.
So, Rhett and Josh go back a few years. How
a lot
how
of
old were you
years.
guys when you guys first met?
I want to say 13 or 14.
Yeah, I was going to say 14, I was guessing.
Maybe freshman year of high school.
Were you both this size?
No.
No, I was the same size. A tall, ginger, chubby fella. Josh was a guy who had like earrings and like Gap sweaters and like looked real cool.
I don't know about that, but
He was skinny.
Did you,
you
wear...
were actually way more skinny back then. I ran across your picture the other day.
Was I?
Yeah.
Huh.
It was when you posted on Facebook from like you and Leah on a date night or something from back in like late high school.
Is that the one I
No.
saw just recently?
It probably wasn't late high school. It was probably like out of high school. You know, had been through some stuff, slimmed down a little bit.
Are you sure? I
think
thought
so.
that was high school still.
No, because Leah and I didn't start dating until after high school.
Oh, okay.
This wasn't Tristan and Josh.
Yeah.
Same thing. So.
Yeah.
Did you wear a chain
I
like
did
he
have
did?
a chain. Yes.
Oh yeah.
Was it? Did everybody?
Everybody
do that?
did.
Was this
Yeah.
99?
I had a sweet silver.
this would have been 97.
Cuban gold, or not Cuban gold, but whatever it was, Cuban link chain.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I had
Just
the
so all the
stainless link chain.
yeah. Can't wear it in the shower
Yeah.
because it gets green. But yeah,
I never got into the chain wearing thing. 'cause
Actually, I
I'm much
think
older.
I did have a real one. I got it in Mexico, I think.
it said his name on it. And it was
Yeah.
carved in. Tristan had the earrings that had Josh on them.
Yeah.
Why no chain? Is it because you're older, fella, or
Well, I guess. I mean, I had an earring. That's about as deviant as I got.
just one?
Yep. Just one.
But left side.
Yeah.
Was the left side the cool side?
It was. It was the side because
That wasn't
when
the
I
gay
was
side?
growing up, if you had it on the right side only, then
You were
that meant,
gay.
yeah, it meant you're gay.
Yeah.
I like your little intro sound tone. Who came up with that?
I wrote it. It came out of the box.
You wrote it.
It was on.
No.
It was on. The
It was out of the
machine.
box.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
it's
there's
sort of
probably
that.
1,000 other podcasts out there that have the same stupid music, or we're the only ones dumb enough to use it.
Well, I
I
do
think
like
it's good.
I think it's great. I like it.
it. It has a lot of cool colors on it. It's like a 808 drum machine.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
What's an 808 drum machine?
Well, I watched a lot of hip hop back in the day, and so they would always say 808, and it was a drum machine that you could play different drum beats on the whatever this is.
Instead of having a drum set.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of rappers have a full quartet or symphony going with them.
Trap set with, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I got a question for you.
Okay.
Do hip hop artists belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
I would say mostly no, because they don't play their own instruments. However, there are some that do some instruments, but I would say like in a musical Hall of Fame, yes, because there's obviously a lot of influence by hip hop artists, and not only obviously black culture, but white culture, especially if you grew up in the mid '90s to now.
Yeah.
A lot of sampling. So if they sample
Yeah.
the songs from rock music, which a lot of them do,
Which we had this conversation. You would probably know better than I would. Is there a hip hop Hall of Fame like there is a Rock and Roll
Yeah,
Hall of
for
Fame?
sure.
What is
It
it?
is. Can Iron Maiden be in the Hip Hop Hall of Fame?
No. But you could say that the fans of Iron Maiden are different than the fans of the hip hop people who sampled Iron Maiden. So they took that one beat or lyric or however what they wanted to do and transitioned it into something that fit a different audience.
So that's their ticket in. Sampling.
Yeah.
No, I don't think it's their ticket in
Okay,
for
you're
sampling.
forgetting I'm not in love anymore.
No, I don't think so. I think what they did is they said, hey, this is a great beat, and we're not great at making beats, but we are great at rapping over those beats.
Yeah.
But you're kind of old, so I don't know. Like, my dad always called it rap crap. Is that what you're into?
The rap crap?
Yeah,
I like hip hop.
you do.
Yeah.
I did. With
Did?
No. I did start. Is what I meant to say. I did start with when the Sugar Hill Gang came out with Eighth
That
Wonder.
was 1979. But yeah.
I was like, "What's this?" And then I
Yeah.
got the Gap Band cassette,
Okay.
and then I was kind of into it.
And then you're just a hammer, don't hurt him kind of guy after that? Or what?
Young MC.
Oh, okay. A lot of East Coast stuff.
Yeah, there was. Well, West Coast didn't have rap until the 90s.
I would say late 80s, yeah.
Well, yeah, late 80s, I guess. NWA, I guess, were they the first West Coast mainstream anyway?
I don't know. I don't know the chronology of. I don't know. It was like DJ Quick, NWA. There's a bunch of guys that were out there as a West Coast hip hop guy prior. Well, I wouldn't say prior, but at the same time, kind of thing.
Where was Two Live Crew from?
They're from Miami or Florida area.
Miami.
Yeah, it was Uncle Rick.
Keith Sweat.
Oh, he's not a hip hop guy.
No, he's more of a Usher type of.
Yeah, but he was like the original. Like, hey, ladies, if you want to get boned down to some music, here's some good music. You know? Like,
See, I was making the mistake of playing George Michael Faith album, and I should have gone with Keith Sweat.
well, it's
Maybe it's just
interesting
George
that you-
Benson. George Benson.
Interesting that you picked a
Actually makes a
homosexual
lot
fella.
more sense.
I know. That's what I'm saying. I picked
Yeah.
the wrong one going with George Michael.
I figured you feel like a Hall and Oates kind of guy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's weird that you're calling out music that he probably fucked to.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Well, like Beethoven or Bach or
If
whatever.
Yeah.
if they had yacht rock when I was in high
Oh
school,
man.
I'd have had a much better time. I would have still been afraid.
So
Well, yeah.
yacht rock. Give me this because you're an older fella. What is the yacht rock age? Is obviously Jimmy Buffett, and then
No,
who else?
there's not really much Jimmy Buffett.
No,
It is. I'll throw down a few
Jimmy,
different groups.
Jimmy Buffett is the original pirate on a boat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yacht rock
Not
is
anymore.
more, if you go late 70s to early 80s music of Ambrosia, 10cc, Atlanta Rhythm Section, a lot of Kenny Loggins thrown in there, Michael McDonald.
Okay, yeah. But why is it yacht rock?
It's because you listen to it when you're on your boat.
It's just like an older white guy that has a.
I'm not in love anymore.
I can't only think of
song's
that
gonna
from
be stuck in my head
40-year-old
for the rest
version
of
where
the
they're
day.
at the Circuit City and then he's playing.
Hey, I'm gonna burn this place to the ground.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they play too much Michael McDonald on there. Nothing against him, but yeah, it is something against him. I fucking don't like listening to it.
Who was the band that Michael McDonald was in prior to
Doobie
being-
Brothers.
Doobie Brothers. Okay, good job.
So yeah, yacht rock is a bunch of pretty vanilla music that's just smooth.
I will take
Okay.
a beer over there, by the
Oh,
way.
yeah, sorry, I
That was
forgot.
part of the whole hand
me
you
too.
wanted to throw
Transaction.
away.
I'll take this one too.
Nice shot.
Thank you. Joshua, you want one of these?
Not one of those. No.
Oh, you don't want one of the America's beers?
No. We need to
Keystone,
get the
huh?
Keystone Light
Oh, U.S.
sponsored
Tour.
by. We're still looking for our sponsorship.
Well, I would say that Luke Combs probably has some pull on the sponsorship, Graham.
Come on, Luke.
Yeah,
Let's go.
yeah. Quit fucking around, Luke.
Yeah.
So I've noticed on this podcast, you guys talk a lot about golf and other people's bullshit, but why don't you guys talk about yourself a little bit more?
Yeah, I don't know. We just end up on the conversations of golf and
Yeah, but
everybody
both of
else
you guys
does.
are realtors. You guys both have a lot of ties to community. You both are successful realtors, so
yeah, we try to keep it away from work.
oh,
All right, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
So, we're about 4 days late even talking on this about Hawk Tua chick.
Oh, I know that
Yeah.
went
It was like,
absolutely viral
yeah.
Yeah.
immediately.
My T-shirt hasn't gotten here yet.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to wear
Did
it
you
and it'd be
order
like a dildo.
Did you order it?
Well, she seems like a nice lady.
She does.
Well, the fucked up thing is apparently, and who knows, there was a million different stories that came out right away. There was like her dad's a pastor and he's disappointed in her. It's like, come on. No, he's not.
Oh.
But
Well, he
I
might
think
be.
she was a teacher
Yeah.
and she got fired
From that?
because of that. That was
No.
the story I heard.
No.
I'm not sure how
Hold
many
on.
kindergartners want to go to school with the Hawk Tua as a primary teacher.
If it was, how about
Hey.
if she was a middle school teacher?
At the end
All
of the
those
day,
guys.
Well,
you
know.
can't fire a broad for that. She didn't have control over that. Somebody else released it. I'd be suing the shit out of that school district.
Possibly, but I do think that there's probably some parents out there that don't want their kid being taught by the Hawk Tua girl.
Why not?
But would you show up to parent-teacher conferences?
Yeah.
I'd probably show up to tell her about the disenchantment of her ways, maybe.
Oh, okay.
There's more to life than being a Hawk Tua girl.
I don't know. She's
there's
actually
not. She's going to make a fuck ton of
she's
money
discovering
off of that.
now.
Yeah.
All the money she's getting from that. If she did, I wonder if she patented that, copyrighted whatever you do.
Do you
I doubt it.
patent Hawk Tua?
I think.
I
that-
think you can.
I think
It's,
Home Depot patents their slogan.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's
Why
that?
can't she? I don't know. Where doers get things done.
There you go.
Was that it?
I don't know.
I think so.
Huh. I'm really surprised
is
you
that-
pulled that out of nowhere.
Yeah. There's that Granger.
I was watching something else. I don't remember. There was another podcast that was talking about it, and it was like, poor fucking broad, honestly, at the end of the day. She's walking out hammered out of a bar. Dude sticks a microphone in her face and starts talking. She's drunk. Of course she's going to say stupid shit. That's what they're supposed to do.
Awesome shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, boom, that gets released. Like, you know, the anxiety the next morning of her laying in bed going, fuck, I can't believe I said that last night.
said
And
what?
then a week later, there it goes.
Yeah. She's like, thank God I said that.
Yeah, I bet you her father's proud.
Yeah.
I would imagine.
Did you see the meme with it's fucking Ben Affleck sitting outside smoking a cigarette? It's like the Hawk Tua's dad.
No,
The next day,
it's
it's
not.
like, God, no.
God damn it.
Well, he should have set her up for success prior to that.
Yeah, true.
She just did it on her own.
Yeah. Well,
How
Some
much?
ladies-
I don't even know how that works. So
you had to spit on it and then you suck it. It's one of those things where
I don't
you
even know
grab
how
it
that works.
with a kung fu grip and then you spit on it and then you suck it. I think, most fellows are into it. So
yeah, because does she make money from that? Do you have to copyright shit first? do you
Well,
all
I'm
of a
sure
sudden-
she's merchandising and she'll probably go after the royalties from that. But then who owns that? It's his footage, the
Yeah.
dude that filmed it.
Yeah, it's his interview.
So
I would imagine that he must have gotten some type of permission from her prior to the Hawk Tua.
right.
Conversation.
And so she goes on there and says that and has no idea that it's going to blow up. Does he own it or does she own it?
I'm not a contract law specialist, but I would imagine he probably owns it.
It seems like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Hey, speaking of law and stuff,
Yeah.
so
law stuff.
law and stuff.
That was a really weird lead in,
Yeah,
but
weird
okay.
conversation. But go ahead, John.
So we're not naming names,
Mm-hmm.
but you are a part of an esteemed group of people that formulated the Cannabis Kid.
Okay,
So-
I wouldn't say esteemed, but I would say
Oh, it's esteemed.
infamous group of folks that
Esteemed.
esteemed. Okay, well,
You know, and the problem, just because we're one of we haven't made it legal yet. Just because we haven't legalized weed, you could have done shit over in Washington.
That is the craziest thing to look back and go,
Yeah,
What,
but
what
real,
fucking shit did I go through and the lengths that you went through and then go, okay, cool, now it's legal.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, if I'm being honest, if it was bananas that were illegal at the time, we probably would have been in the banana smuggling game. So
Yeah, of course.
Right.
it's not like it's
money making.
No,
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
to make money, yeah.
It certainly wasn't like we had this big, long, drawn out thing of like, oh, we love marijuana and we want to make sure that marijuana gets to all these end users. It was, hey, we can make money off of marijuana, and so that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
So,
Awesome. So let's go back to the beginning.
okay.
If you're comfortable with it,
Without
how
names.
did it start? Yeah, without names.
Yeah.
How did it start?
Okay, so I would say when we were 17, 18 years old, there was a large demand for marijuana within Coeur d'Alene, Spokane area, and there was all these other players in there. There was people getting it from all over the place. A friend of mine decided that he was going to go to Canada and see if he could get, I would say, wholesale marijuana from people up in Canada because we'd heard that they had the best marijuana. And so he went up there with another guy and they got the marijuana and they came back and we sold that marijuana and we made a bunch of money on it. So
Yeah.
So, like, what was is there a typical percentage of, all right, if you get it for this much, you have to, because with real estate investing, you want to invest X percent to put in X percent to make X percent.
So I would say at the time, a quarter pound of marijuana here went for $800 a pound. So $3,200 for an entire pound. In Canada, it was $2,100 a pound.
Oh.
So if you went up there with, say, $4,000 or $5,000, you could get 2 pounds, come back here and make almost $2,000.
Aha.
By the way, you're past all your statute of limitations bullshit, right?
Yeah, I would
Okay.
hope so. I would hope as a convicted felon I'm past all the limitations.
They're not going to come back on you. No double jeopardy for this guy.
No, we'll see what happens with Biden getting back in this motherfucker.
So at first, like, whenever you got involved, were you just going up there and driving it back?
So I would say at first I was not involved. So at first it was a friend of mine. They were going up there and they were getting 2 to 3 pounds at a time, at the most. But that quickly, I would say within 6 months or so, changed to, let's say 40 pounds at a time.
Holy fuck.
Well, it's not that much. So
Hold on. You said 2 to 3 pounds.
yeah, so the 2 to
Went to
3 pounds.
40.
Well,
Well, all of a sudden you have enough money to buy.
if you go up there and you
whole lot
make
more.
several 2 to 3 pound purchases, eventually you go up there and they'll make 10 to 20 to 40 pound purchases that you pay half for and then pay on the comeback kind of thing.
Yeah.
You
So
built
you
up
can
credit
start
with
you
them.
can start
Yeah.
doing volume at that point.
Yeah, I would
So-
say but volume then versus volume, what it got to was much different. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so were people just driving it back across the border?
So it was always kind of the same plan. So a friend of mine, he developed a pretty good plan.
And by the way, I've never seen the show. I've never seen the movie.
The movie? Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, it's not very, I wouldn't say it's an autobiographical film. I would say that it's a little bit,
It might be one-sided.
there was a guy
Yeah.
that had his influence in that movie. But
Yeah.
I would say that realistically what happened is that as it went forward and there was more product coming across and so forth, like essentially what it was that I don't even know how to say it, but we kind of looked at ourselves as like import-export people. It wasn't like a dealer of this, a dealer of that. It was a
It
hey,
wasn't
we go
a
up to-
drug dealer thing. It was a transaction of money.
Yeah, it was just like, hey,
goods.
we have figured out this plan to go up to this area, grab this marijuana, come back, sell it for a profit, and move on.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was coming here anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there
Why not you be the one?
yeah, I would say at the time there was probably 100 people that were involved in doing that at a small scale, and then it got kind of consolidated into one type of thing. So
Yeah.
one or two. So.
And we knew each other at the time. It
Yeah.
wasn't like that was your. It wasn't like the drug lifestyle.
That didn't define
wasn't
you.
what it was.
That wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I would say that we were normal 18, 19
Yeah,
year
you're
kids,
normal
and-
kids fucking around. And you went, cool. I can make money doing this. Why not?
Yeah, you know, like when you're 18, like you get a credit card and like, hey, you can get a cash advance for this much money. You're like, cool, I could put in on this next load coming in. I can make
Yeah.
50%.
Right.
XYZ. So,
Yeah.
So what does your credit card statement say?
a lot of missed payments, to be honest. When it came to that, it was, a lot of $29 over charges for not making a payment. But I would say, like, realistically, you get a cash advance, and then people would, like, within the community of Coeur d'Alene, you had lots
people
of
pulling
people that
in.
were like, hey, we'll throw in $1,000, $500, and then, you had 20 grand, you went up there, you bought 40 pounds, you came back, and it was kind of the same thing over and over for the first 6 months. So
Yeah.
You never had to write them a check up there.
no, they didn't take checks. They were a little bit different,
So how much money as an 18, 19-year-old were you making in a month?
Well, so it was different. So everybody had their own little different job, right? So you had obviously the main person that was making the vast majority of the money. You had drivers, you had runners, you had people that were distributing. So, you're probably talking like the average person was making, say, $5,000 a month.
Oh shit!
Yeah. So back in 2001, pretty good amount of money, especially
Yeah.
without having a job.
Really?
So,
Yeah. No shit.
Yeah.
Were you buying fun stuff?
Not initially. So I wasn't really involved initially until, I was involved in the sense that I knew what was going on, but I didn't partake in going up there or doing the whole thing until probably 9 months or a year into it. So
Wow, that's funny. I was selling real estate, not making any money.
yeah. Well, you have
that
to think
time.
like 2001, like things were a little bit weird. You had like the September 11th thing. You had all kinds of kind of weird economies going on.
Yeah.
But in this area, there really wasn't.
There was not the big money that's here now.
No, not at all.
It
Like, there
wasn't here.
No big money. There wasn't a bunch of people that were looking at things. And so if you were flashy, like it was going to come out pretty easily. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which ended up kind of being some of the downturn.
It was. It's hard
It was
as a kid to
yeah,
not have.
you can't blame any kid for doing exactly what happened. But at the end of the day, it's like, if that wouldn't have happened, nobody would have known.
No, but I also think like, so the whole thing that the kind of the plan or the thing that we were doing was kind of literally right underneath the nose of the people that were supposed to be watching it.
Yeah.
And so I think that the kind of the hardship that came down on part of it was that it was a very simple plan. It was very close to where the Border Patrol agents were at. They
You
didn't know what
duped
was
them
happening.
and they were mad
Exactly.
about it.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
I'm sure if I was 18, 19 years old and somebody said at that time $5,000 a month, I'd be fucking getting in my Nissan
yeah.
and heading on up there.
Well, and at the time you have to think. So like,
I drove to Moscow and said, I'm going to school.
yeah. And I was going to school also, but
yeah,
you have to think
you
too, like
were.
at the time, like, there wasn't like the surveillance state. There wasn't all this kind of stuff that's going on now. So like
No.
everything was a little bit different. So.
Well, and then what you actually ended up getting in trouble for has zero drug charges on any of it. They, of course, just went after you for not paying taxes, basically. They
Yeah,
went after
not
you for
paying
money
taxes
laundering
and-
is pretty much what it was, wasn't it?
Yeah. So money laundering, which is a broad term for
Yeah.
essentially not reporting earnings
Yeah.
and all kinds of stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, like I would say that it was.
But you have zero drug charges.
no drug charges. So, not to say that.
Which is funny when you look back at it and it's like, okay, well, that's honestly, that's what it turned into. All they really care about is if they can make money off of it in the long run.
Yeah, so I would say at the
so
end, what
who
they were looking
cares?
for was like, how can we attack all those assets that were purchased through illegal means.
Yeah.
Which they didn't end up being able to do. So they were,
Yeah.
was I kind of, I wouldn't say pissed off, but kind of pissed off. And so they went after everybody for all the other charges.
Yeah.
And so, they were going to throw the max book at you for whatever they could.
Kind of. So it was like, so when people are involved in a big operation like that, you have essentially a conspiracy to commit a certain crime, which in this case was importation of marijuana. So what they do is they get all these people that were kind of ancillary people, and they get them to talk, and they get them to build up this conspiracy to something that kind of may or may not be what it was. And in this case, I would say like, 75% of it was true, 25% wasn't. But at the same time, like that 75%, got you cooked anyway.
There was nowhere to go out of that.
Yeah, no, not at all.
But the 25% was whoever was coming up with the story to get themselves out of trouble.
Yeah, so like when you look at like
out.
I would say like the calendar of events, so to speak, as far as like when people started talking, like you could go, okay, well, this person talked at this time, this person, this person, this person. Well, the people that were initially, they were building up this big, like, hey, they did this, they did that, they have all this money, yada, yada, yada. And that was so they could get a lower sentence on what they did. So,
And so ultimately their goal was to get the head of the operation.
I would say that ultimately their goal is, especially in a federal case, is to always get the most amount of years total that they can convict all of the players in, because essentially you have like a budget, right, for the federal government. And so the federal government says, well, hey, we convicted X amount of people and we got this many years in jail or whatever sentence that these people got. So they're always looking to pump those numbers. And so that's why you always get a federal conviction rate of 99+%.
Yeah.
And it's because what they're doing is they're saying, okay, well, either you take this deal or we'll give you 20 years. And so as a 19-year-old kid, you're like, well, holy shit, 20 years is my entire life. I don't want to do that. And so they're just plinking off all of the little members of the crew until they get to you and they go, hey, well, this is what it is. And that's what
here's what you get.
Yeah. And when you got, was it 2?
2 years, yeah.
That sounds a lot better than 20.
It does, yeah.
What happened the day of the arrest? Like, were you expecting something? Did they ask you to turn yourself in? Or did they just blindside you all of a sudden, bam?
There was other people that were involved in the case that were like, hey, on this date, this is going to happen. And so I would say for me, I was kind of like real nervous, all the way up, leading up into that point. I left my house. I was working at a call center at the time. I was working 5 a.m. to like 12 or 1:30 or something like that, and then going to school afterwards. So I left my house at 5:30. All of a sudden, I was like, man, there's a lot of cop cars around here at 5:30. When I got down to kind of downtown, I got pulled over. I kind of knew what the story was. They pulled me over. They said, hey, you're under arrest for X, Y, and Z. And I was like, okay. But at the time, I was like, well, I haven't been involved in this operation for at least a year at that time. So I was like, well, no big deal for me, so.
Get off.
Because when you got, like, when you actually had to go to court, that was the fuck thing.
Yeah.
You'd been out for a year and a half by the time you went to court.
Roughly a year and a half. Like I hadn't done
because you were down going to school in Moscow,
like the whole thing. And
like you were totally out.
And so essentially, what happened to me is that they said, "Well,"
or did you live in Pullman?
No, I was in Moscow. So
you're in Moscow.
What they were saying was that I was involved in this conspiracy up until the point that I went on this vacation with all these other guys.
Right.
And when I went on this vacation, I wasn't involved in these guys. I was just, we were just friends. So, it was kind of a little bit of a shitty deal. But at the same time, they called me this person's consigliere, which is like a term for like a advisor, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so when they kind of pushed that title on me, it was like, oh, well, you must be involved in all these other items. And it was like, it's more so like if you were friends with somebody,
you're in the day to day.
Yeah. And if it was like, you and I are friends and you're doing this and you come to me and you say, hey, what do you think about this? And I go, oh, I wouldn't do this. I would do that.
Yeah.
Like that's in their terms, that's a consigliere. So
Oh.
Right.
So you get in trouble for that. And then so when they pulled you over downtown, they said you're getting arrested. Was it? They didn't have guns drawn and shit like that. It was just did they do the handcuffing thing? Did you have to lean against the wall and do all this?
it was a local police
Was it on
person.
Sherman?
No, it was on 7th Street. So they pulled me over. I got out of the car.
7th and
I don't know, Montana, maybe something like that.
okay.
So
All
downtown.
Right. Yeah, right by the park.
So they pull me over. I get out of the car. They ask me what my name is, blah, blah, blah. I tell them, yeah, this is me, whatever. They immediately, like within like 30 seconds, put my car in a tow truck, which was a car that I'd gotten from my grandfather when he died. He died like 3 months earlier. I was like, well, hey, like, that's my grandfather's car. Like, you can't take that car. Blah, blah,
Yeah.
like, well, this blah, blah, blah. So they take me downtown Coeur d'Alene to the FBI building. Coincidentally, I would say.
The one on the river?
It was the tall building downtown, the tower.
It was not in Riverstone where it is now.
No, so it was those condos that are downtown, the older ones that are whatever 7 stories tall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had a FBI thing in
they
there,
did? Oh.
and so they took me in there. The crazy thing about the federal government is that they know everything you've done for a long time before they come talk to you. So I had been to Canada the week earlier, and so I had gone up there and visited a friend of mine, and then brought his girlfriend back into the United States, which they knew about. And so they were asking me a lot of questions about that, like where this person, the friend of mine was staying, which I was like, well, essentially go fuck yourself. I'm not going to tell you where he was staying. Because when you cross over the border, you cross over in Creston, and then you're wide open from there. So I had gone up there probably 100 times before then, and they had every record of every time I'd ever crossed.
Oh,
on that.
really?
Yeah. So I had been arrested at the border before for possession of a deadly weapon, which was a set of brass knuckles.
I forgot about that. That's fucking awesome.
I totally forgotten about. Like, they were like, "Have you ever been arrested in Canada?" I was like, "No, never." And they're like, "Oh yeah, what about this?" And I was like, "Oh shit, I forgot about that." So I had
But guys, come on, brass knuckles are cool, right?
I was like, "That's a paperweight." I don't know where the keychain went to it, but so. Anyways, it was like we used to go to that place down in Coeur d'Alene that sold all kinds of crazy.
The one on
shit.
Government Way?
Yeah.
Yeah, by Nosworthy's?
Yeah, exactly. So
Place is badass.
yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah.
Like, they would give you whatever you wanted. So anyways, so I go-
Lighters, blowguns.
yeah, blow
brass
guns,
knuckles.
brass knuckles,
Throwing
knives,
stars,
two-handed
knives.
swords.
yeah,
Yeah.
little Haktua swords, whatever. So, so they knew all that information. They had apparently been, I guess, surveillancing me for a long time. They thought that I was like the money person for a buddy of mine.
Was it because of the chain?
No, I think it was people had told them that. So, we had.
Well, and you didn't end up being, the fault was you had more stuff than other people in your name.
I did. So I had which was
some
my
of it was legitimate.
Some of it was legitimate. Some of it was my downfall in the sense that I had registered vehicles in my name. I did a bunch of different stuff. And at the time, I was just like, oh, I'm an 18-year-old kid. I get whatever, $20,000 to go register this F-150 in my name. Whatever, I don't care. Like, it's not me. I'm not paying for it, XYZ.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
And then I've never been a gun guy, like, ever in my whole life, and certainly not now, but I had bought 2 SKS rifles at Black Sheep or something like that. And so that it was like this big kind of a kerfuffle about like, oh, you're a straw purchase for guns, you're a money launderer, all these different things. And so essentially what it was just a pressure to get me to tell where this person was living. And so kind of what I did, which I knew wasn't going to work anyways, but I was like, oh, well, hey, if you let me go and you give me no charge, whatever, I'll tell you where I went. And so they were all the FBI agents were like, oh yeah, we're gonna get this. We're gonna know where he's at. And so I was like, oh yeah, no problem. And so then the prosecutor came in. It was a lady by the name.
Becky.
She's a nice lady, but she's a federal prosecutor, so she's got
Yeah.
to do her job. And so she came in and she was like, no fucking way am I doing that. Like, there's no way on the earth that I'm giving you a free pass. And I was
Oh,
like,
really?
okay. So,
Which, going back to it, Rhett as a kid was like child genius. Like, you couldn't tell Rhett up front, but he was.
Yeah,
he
so-
was a lot smarter than they
Are
thought
you
he
saying
was
he
at
looks
the time.
dumb?
No,
yeah,
they were
well,
just.
yeah.
He was a lot smarter than they realized he was at the time.
So I was trying to manipulate the
Yeah.
situation, right? So, because I knew, like, hey, like, they don't have the authority to go into Canada and find out where these people are living and where all this stuff is coming from. And at the time, there was still a fairly major operation of moving marijuana back from Canada. So I didn't want to give up any of that. So they came in and the lady said, Nancy said, oh, no, we're not going to give you that deal. I said, okay, fine, I'm done talking. So it was interesting. So I went back to the federal courthouse, which is downtown Coeur d'Alene, and they read me my charging documents, which was a very lengthy charging document. It was, I want to say it was like something like 60 or 70 counts of things. And so essentially it was like,
The ticky tack.
Yeah.
well, I would, it was, so there was a guy who had been with us in our case, and he had been keeping records of every time we'd gone up to Canada and how much marijuana we were bringing back. And so he essentially facilitated them to charge us for every time that we had been to Canada and back, right? So he essentially kept a logbook. So
How do they fucking know when you went each time?
Well, you're checking
Well,
across the border every time.
And how much you were bringing, though?
They didn't know that.
Well, so this guy, he had thought that by keeping this record, he could essentially get himself and his parents out of this whole deal if anything ever happened. Well, when he decided to turn as a scapegoat
State's
or whatever,
witness.
he gave them this record. So what they did is they said, okay, well, Rhett, you were involved in this case up until the time that you went up to vacation with all these guys. And so, which I hadn't been involved, but whatever. So they said, okay, so from the inception point until this date, you guys smuggled in, it was like, I don't know, like 3,500 pounds or 4,000 pounds of marijuana. And so it was
That would fill this room.
it was essentially like the number one thing was a conspiracy to import marijuana as a drug trafficking organization, and then money laundering, and then like 65 counts of importation.
same thing.
Right, same thing. Right.
Yeah.
So that part was scary because
I was going to say, are you panicking at this point when you go,
When they
holy
read your
fuck,
charges?
they actually have legitimate
I would say kind of, but like at the
dated
time, like
charges?
I was like, well, I haven't done this. Like, it's not me. Like, I'm not.
Right.
I've not been involved in this whole scenario. So, when I go into court, they, it's kind of weird. It's like a 1970s looking courthouse, weird curtains on the wall, whatever. And I'm there shackled with other defendants, and so they say, okay, well, come up to the bench, and
Are they reading you guys all at the same time?
No, so it's each individual person is going getting read, but it's kind of the same charges for everybody, but it's different. So you have the main guy who's not there, right?
No.
Because he's
Yeah.
in Canada. You have all the snitches that aren't there because they have already
They're
pled
not in the
guilty or
room.
they've already done their thing.
Which is funny looking back at that. Like, at the time, they're probably thinking, like, oh, they'll never know. And then it's like everybody's sitting there cuffed, and you're like, that guy's not here, that guy's not here, and that
exactly.
guy.
Yeah, so,
Weird. I wonder how we ended up in this fucking
Yeah.
spot.
and it was fucked because for me and the main guy, like, they had our parents involved in it.
Yeah.
There was all kinds of dumb shit going on. So I go up there with 3 of the people that I'm with, and they're reading the charges, and they're saying, like, oh, this is a possibility of life without parole in federal prison. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, holy shit. Like, I thought we were just moving some fucking weed. Like, so,
I was going to spend a week at county.
yeah, exactly. So, and like, 10 minutes before that, we'd have been like in the holding cells and everybody's like kind of chirping and chopping the shit and whatever. And I was like,
like, all right, guys, we're gonna play this cool. And then you go up there, like, fuck, my life's over.
Exactly. And then we come back and like, all of us are like just, exhausted from the process and all that. So, that whole deal was weird because it was like, hey, like these 4 guys you're sitting here with, or 3 guys, like you can't talk to any of them. And you're like, okay, well, it's weird that you brought us all in together, but whatever. So, I went on, I guess it was called federal pretrial, and federal pretrial is just basically like being on probation. And, the whole time the feds are trying to get you to tell on all these other things. And so, like, oh, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And you're like, no, I didn't do that. I didn't do that. I didn't do that. And so eventually I talked to the person that was in Canada still, and he said, oh, you should just plead guilty and plead to what you know and blah, blah, blah. And initially I was like, no, I'm not going to do that, blah, blah, blah. But realistically, like when you're on federal trial, like the length of the time is so long that there's really no fighting it.
You're not getting out of it.
No, and like they know so much prior to you getting there. Like they were like, oh, do you know this person? Do you know that person? I was like, no, I don't know this person. And they're like, oh, there's a picture of you with this person right here in a parking lot. And you're like, okay, well, I knew that guy as a different guy. I didn't know that you knew that guy as this guy. So
that was Ray, and he was wearing his pants.
Exactly. So so it becomes like a weird, overwhelming.
Where they have more information than you.
Yeah,
think
they have
could
so
ever
much
be
information,
had.
and every time you go meet with them, they have another piece of information because somebody else has told something.
Right.
Ultimately, like, I guess is in a weird way, is like I pleaded guilty. I accepted responsibility for the part that I did. I signed over the assets that were in my name that they could prove that were, I guess, ill-begotten gains.
Yeah.
But what I really wanted to do is, so they were talking about they did charge my dad. They were talking about charging my dad and my mom.
Right.
I didn't want my mom to be in trouble, so I said, whatever, like I'll fucking do whatever you want to do. And because I was talking to my buddy in Canada, I didn't feel terrible about admitting what I did. So
right. That was the fucked part. Like the parents thing that they went after in that whole deal.
Yeah. And if you
which
think
I
about,
guess
like,
that's like, they know they got you if they go.
Well, and the thing is like there's so many federal crimes. So like if, like let's say you were 18 years old and your dad knew that you were selling marijuana and you were paying your parents' light bill with the gains from marijuana sales, like all of a sudden your dad is involved in conspiracy.
Yeah.
So for me, well, I mean, I guess it is what it is. That's the letter of the law. But at the same time, like, and our parents knew, like that was.
But at the end of the day, your mom probably really didn't know the extent.
Oh no, my mom was like, I don't want to hear any of this.
No.
I don't want to know any of this, whatever. And so,
which your dad's probably, I know your dad well enough. He's probably out there chopping it up with you guys, like, oh fuck yeah, what are we doing? You know,
he
like,
was, smoking cigars, smoking
not
blunts
thinking that
with
it's
kids.
like, hey, I'm involved. He's doing the. Oh yeah, let's hear some fucking stories here, guys.
Yeah, and I think my dad was more so like, oh, like I used to do this back in the day, like what, all
the
these
kids are being kids.
Yeah.
They're having fun. He didn't
having
realize the extent that.
And I think like from his perspective, it wasn't like this is the crazy criminality that it could become. It was more so like hey, they're just selling weed, like not a big deal.
Yeah,
They're not
More administrative stuff. You're
Right,
not out there
exactly.
fucking stabbing people.
And so essentially, stabbing people. That's what essentially got us in trouble, was that.
Thanks, John.
Yeah. Good segue. So the guy that I was friends with, that was kind of the leader of this whole pack, there was a hit put out on him by a kind of a rival Coeur d'Alene dealer. And that whole hit kind of came out of not just that we were... So when we went up to Canada, we made really good friends with this DJ that was from Scotland. And this DJ was part of kind of a collective of folks up in that area. And so they had like I don't know how you would say it, but like a group collective where all these farmers would say, hey, we got this many pounds of marijuana. Let's sell them to somebody, right?
Right.
And so it was cheap. It was a great deal, blah, blah, blah. Well, this guy got pissed off that we were getting it for that cheap or moving it back for them. I don't know. But essentially what happened is that he wanted the guy that I'm friends with to move cocaine to Canada on the route moving marijuana back. That guy said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not interested in moving cocaine up to Canada. And so they put a hit out on him. And so when they put the hit out on him, there was a lot of shit that happened with that. There was a kidnapping. A kid from Coeur d'Alene. He'd been adopted by a white set of parents, a very affluent couple that had a good family, good, I would say, biological kids. And they had adopted this other kid. And so they had raised this kid. He had been to the best schools, yada, yada, but he wanted to be a gangster, essentially. So...
And they were super affluent too.
Very affluent,
It wasn't.
yeah. So I would say that essentially what happened was that this kid decided that he wanted to be a gangster. He had connections in California. He called these people from California saying, hey, I want to kill this guy in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, because he's kind of fucking up my program and doing my whatever. They came up here. They did actually perform a kidnapping on one of the guys that we were friends with. It didn't result in anything.
Because they thought that's where the main guy was at, right?
That, and I think that that guy that they kidnapped didn't know our address.
Right.
And so, which was obviously strategic at the time.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it was.
that happened. You know, they didn't get much of it, but probably 40 pounds of marijuana and some money and whatever. And then they were looking for him. That guy, Wang, wasn't putting up the money that he had promised these people that had come from California. He ended up getting his, I guess, life ended. And that's where the whole investigation started.
Yeah.
We'll take a quick break and come right back.
All right.
Right. We're back.
We're back.
We're going to, where do we leave off? Right when, what's his face ends up getting killed.
Yeah.
By the guys that were hired to kill the other main guy because he basically didn't pay him, right? Is that what it was?
Yeah, I would say that, like, essentially he didn't pay them because they hadn't performed the job.
Right.
They had probably absconded with like $40,000 in money and another 40 pounds in marijuana.
Right.
I think that guy was saying like, hey, why aren't you guys killing these people? Like, we know where they're kind of at, which is in the Avondale area. But they didn't know exactly where we were at, which is,
Right.
you know, good for us, obviously.
Yeah.
It would have been a bad scenario if they had come to our house because we were
Yeah.
very well armed.
Prepared.
Yeah.
If that were to
not
happen.
for that necessarily, but just for anything. So
Yeah.
the interesting thing about that whole story was once he got kidnapped, so he owed money on 40 pounds of marijuana, right?
Up in Canada still.
No, in the U.S. So
Okay.
he had taken delivery of 40 pounds of marijuana. Whoa. Anyways,
Tua.
I thought I had drank more out of that. Go.
Bless you.
thank you. He was supposed to have paid that, of course. He didn't because of the fact that he had been kidnapped and robbed.
Right.
Him and his girlfriend at the same time. None of us believed him, which was a shitty thing. Like, if, you know, looking back on it, like, essentially we were all like, you're full of shit. You didn't do this. You didn't do that. So there was a lot of
so nobody believed him at the time.
no, because it was such a crazy story. Like, it was like,
You're like,
oh,
you're kidding me, right?
well, you're in North Idaho.
Yeah.
And these Hispanic fellas kidnapped you and they were only speaking Spanish to each other.
Yeah.
And we were like, yeah, where did these guys come from?
Right.
So,
right.
So that was like a point of a little bit of
Contention.
a little
between
contention,
everybody.
a little,
Yeah.
you know, like, hey, like, what the fuck, what's going on, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, and when you're in the drug game, I would say, like, there's always this thing of like, oh, I got robbed, oh, I got
There's going
this.
to be
And
somebody
there's
that's going to
always
fuck you in the long
Yeah.
run.
You know, and if I was to list all the people in Coeur d'Alene still that said that they had gotten robbed during a drug deal, you know,
Yeah.
it'd be pretty a vast list of people.
Right,
Which
right.
is essentially, you know, they sold whatever they had and they decided to keep the money. So
Wait a minute, I don't have it anymore.
yeah,
Sorry.
and so the guy that was my buddy, still is my buddy, was never a violent person, was never like going
No.
after anybody, never
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm gonna fucking kill this guy, whatever. Like none of that ever came up. So, so when this guy said I got robbed, we were like,
Yeah,
you know, kind of
right,
like, what the
man.
fuck are you talking about? Like,
Yeah.
all these Mexican guys came up to North Idaho, like that all spoke Spanish. Like, where are these guys coming from? Anyway, so that whole thing kind of died out, like nothing happened, whatever. And then we went to our trip to Cancun. And so we went to Cancun. We had a great time. It was me and like, I don't know, 6 or 8 different guys.
Yeah.
We had a great time. We went to all these different places. We had whatever. And that was what the federal government decided was my last kind of like foray or soiree into the drug game. And that's what I ended up getting convicted on with all the other charges. But,
And they knew you guys all went.
yeah, so we'd gotten like a travel agent and they had done their whole
Yeah,
thing. So when it all came out, it was like, so there's just people, right? And I won't name any names. It's been a long time, but people who had told on us and other things. And so when we were coming back from Cancun, we had to stop in St. Louis. And so there was this one guy and he kept saying, oh, I don't have my passport. I don't have this. I don't have that. And we were like, oh,
One of
what
your
the-
group?
Yeah, one of our group. And so we were like, what the fuck's going on? Like, this guy, like, why is he being so weird? Like, all of us have our things and whatever. We're trying to get on the plane. Well, it turns out that guy was telling on us. So, you know, it is what it is. Like, it's been a long time. But,
Yeah, but still, you go through that whole trip and
yeah, and you start
party with
in your
everybody,
mind and
and
you're
then
like, oh, man,
what the
like,
fuck, man,
this
really?
one guy did this, whatever. Like,
Yeah.
and so what happened is he thought that we were involved in this guy getting killed.
Right.
And so I do understand now, being a 40-year-old person, that he was under the impression that, and a lot, you know, of course, when you're 19, 20 years old, you talk a big game, right? So, oh, if this guy did this, I would do that, right? So he was under the impression that we had something to do with this guy getting killed. The federal government certainly made him feel that way, and so he decided to tell on us.
Yeah.
So he was taking
Which was not the case in any way,
not
shape,
at
or
all.
form.
Like,
and they,
no, and they and it ended up being like that was not the case at all. Like there was no
those guys ended up
information.
getting convicted.
Yeah, they got the one
individually.
guy got life in prison.
Yeah.
His sisters were big time female basketball players on UW, et cetera, et cetera. So there was all this other stuff that went on with that. But
It was a different story. Yeah.
really, what happened is when that guy started telling is when we started the kind of the case started getting in trouble for us. So that was in like November of 04. And by November of 05 is when we got in trouble. So it took about a year for them to come up with it.
Yeah.
And there was a bunch of different things that happened in between. There was raids on houses. We had decided to move to San Diego, and so we were going to rent this big, nice house. And I'll not get into all of it, but there was we were very good friends with a guy who at the time he was also selling marijuana. And so he had turned us on to San Diego, and I was from San Diego originally, and so we were going to do this thing. Well, anyway, so in March of that next year, so from November when he got killed to March the next year, we were essentially like dormant. Like there was nothing going on.
Yeah.
There was little, side deals here and there, but nothing big. And so they got raided. They found 1 pound of marijuana in the entire group of people. My best friend had 2 registered firearms, which they ended up charging him with later. But essentially there was nothing at all that happened in that next 6 months.
But at that point, they thought you guys were leaving town and they were going to get you before you left.
So I think what their thought is that they were going to catch us leaving town with a bunch of money
With
and a bunch of
everything,
weed
yeah.
and a bunch of whatever. So, and that didn't happen. It wasn't happening. Like,
You were literally moving normally.
yeah, like it was
Yeah.
essentially like, yes, we were, being honest, we were probably going to sell some pounds of marijuana when we got down to California.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like that was the thing that we were going to do. And so once we got down, so they came in, they raided everybody. They didn't raid me, which was great because at the time I had a safe with a lot of money in it.
Yeah.
So there's a local lake here called Avondale Lake. I went down and hid at Avondale Lake. Nobody ever came. No problem.
Yeah.
And then that was in like March, and then in November is when they came for everybody. So when they came for everybody, I kind of already had a premonition that, I won't even say a premonition. I would say that it was a
You knew
real,
it was coming.
thing. And it was, part of it was because the people that were cooperating with those folks in the federal government were already telling me what they were, I guess.
That is a
Cooperating
funny like concept when you actually look at it, of like they're snitching on everybody, and yet they're still letting you know, like, hey, don't be around on this date. Which, as an 18-year-old kid, you can't blame some of them. Some of them you can. I've heard more of the story than probably others have.
Yeah.
Of some of them, you go, fuck that guy. Others, you go, hey, he didn't really tell that much.
Well, I would
He
say
was
like,
just trying to not get the life in prison charge
so-
that they were putting in front of everybody.
at 18, 19 years old, like the thought of spending the next 5 years in prison is crazy. So
Yeah.
the thought of spending the next 15, 20 years in prison is like a monumental thing where you're like, that's double my life already at this point. So
Right.
I do, I wouldn't say like have like a little bit of, I do have some compassion for those folks.
100%,
I wouldn't say
yeah.
like, oh, like they should have done it, but it is what it is. Like, I get it. So, but those people told us like, hey, this is going down in November. So
Yeah.
then when we all got arrested in November, it was like, oh yeah, well, not a problem, because I've already known this is going to happen. Like, I've cleared everything out of my house. I haven't had anything to do with this for 2 years. I don't think anything's going to happen to me.
They don't have anything on me.
But then they come back with, okay, well, so when I'm in the car, once they arrest me, they start driving me around to all these areas in Coeur d'Alene. Oh, hey, do you know this car? Do you know this car? And I'm like, oh, no, I've never seen that car before, but it's in my name, so it's kind of a stupid.
Like, God damn,
guess-
you guys have done your homework.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, oh, well, no, that's my buddy this guy's car, and this is my buddy this guy's car. And they're like,
What do
oh,
you think
well,
of this Ford Focus?
Yeah, they're like, well, those are all in your name. And I'm like, oh, weird. I don't know. So it's a kind of a futile argument, at that point, to tell them that I'm not involved in this. Anyway, so I go to court on that first day. They tell me life, whatever. Throughout the next 6 months, 7 months, something like that, they tell me.
Because you bailed out, though. Shortly after that.
Yeah, so right away they gave us a PR bond. So it was a personal recognizance.
Oh,
It was
okay.
just no bail. It was just, and I think at the time, like, so there was a kind of a formation of federal investigators and also state investigators. And the state investigator, at the time I thought he was an asshole, but really looking back, I think he had our best interests in mind. He didn't fight for extra bond or anything like that. He was like, hey, these are just kids. Like, they're not going anywhere. They don't have anywhere to go. Like,
They honestly, like, looking back at it, they probably were thinking these kids are dumb enough that they'll lead us to something else.
maybe, like, and at the time I was like, I probably would have if I had anything to show them. But I was living in a fucking trailer at that point.
I know.
So it certainly wasn't like I was living the high life by any means. But so at any rate, so go to court, all the whole shenanigans. I decided to plead guilty to a money laundering charge and a asset forfeiture charge, which was like, I guess it's kind of two felonies, but not really. So it's one. It's
all the same.
money laundering charge. And so they'd already had all these things written out that were asset forfeiture.
They were taking all your shit anyway.
Cars, boats, all the other shit that you had in your name. So I take that charge, go to court. I get sentenced to 24 months in federal prison, which honestly, at 19 years old, or 20, maybe I was 21 at the time. But at the time, 21 years old, 2 years sounded like it was a fucking death sentence. I was like, oh my God. Like, and now, like, at 40, you're like, oh my, like 2 years, no big deal.
2
But
years.
at the time, it seemed like it was a huge deal. So in federal court, you have from the time that you get sentenced until the time that you have to report. There's a self-report, which is essentially like you haven't been sentenced to a ton of times, so they are kind of counting on the fact that you'll self-report. was 70 days. So next 70 days, I have to work.
God.
I have my girlfriend at the time. This is my wife now. We're trying to get everything settled up. I have a dog. I have fish. I have all these things that I'm trying to like figure out how to, make work for the next 2 years. So I get down to, keep in mind, I'm from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
That's the longest 70 days of your life.
It's very long. So,
yeah.
And basically what they're telling you is if you don't self-report, the U.S. Marshals are gonna come get you, and they're gonna take you to where you're supposed to go.
You're like, Mexico's not that far.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like,
we could live a good life.
I've been to Canada a bunch of times. I could probably make this fucking work, and my mom, who she's dead now, but she was like, you should just run. And I was like, what the fuck?
Mom.
She's like, fuck that. Like, just go. Like, what are they going to do to you? And I was like, oh my God, I should probably just go. But, I think it was like she's your mom. So she's like trying to self-preserve the fact that
your mom was ride or die, though.
She was. My mom was a fucking gangster bitch. And so she was, my mom has never been involved in anything like illegal at all. But my dad
she was looking out for
involved
your
in
best.
something illegal.
Yeah.
I'm in something illegal, So my mom had like a rosy picture of everybody. And even the guy that I was best friends with, she loved him just as much as it was her own son. And she thought that this whole thing was essentially a witch hunt, that they were trying to fuck him over and he should just stay in Canada, which by the time that I came to sentencing, he had turned himself in. So so I'd gotten arrested in November. I think by Christmas of that year, he had turned himself in, kind of along the same line. So his mom was being charged with crimes.
Right.
They were going to continue to keep moving on to his grandparents and his parents and his father and all that. And so he just decided, I'm going to turn myself in. Which
that's where they know they got you.
Yeah, and it's interesting
if it's for himself, he's going, fuck it, I don't really care.
Start going after family.
Yeah, and so when they go after family, like, I mean, I get, like I said, as an older person now, I get why they do that. But during the time and looking at it from a perspective of what we were doing at the time, like, it's a complete bullshit thing that they do because it becomes,
had nothing to do with it. Who cares?
And even if it's like, hey, Josh, your mom got a VCR for Christmas, and you bought it for her with drug money. Like, she's a part of the conspiracy.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's horse shit on that sense, but from the legal sense of view, like, it is what it is. So anyways, he turns himself in. I go to do my thing. I got 2 years in federal prison, so I was thinking I was going for 2 years. I had tried to go for a federal boot camp, and at the time they declined me for the federal boot camp. And so I was like, well, I'm going to go.
Does that shorten it or something?
So essentially what the federal boot camp is that you have to do a 6-month stint at federal boot camp. And then you have, and it's only for people who are nonviolent offenders, no like kind of extra charges, which I didn't have. And then you would have to do, I think it's 5 months at a halfway house. So basically it would take your 2 years to 6 months in boot camp if you got in right away, which nobody does. But essentially it's not based on your reporting date, it's based on your start date. So just like your son went to boot camp, if you showed up 3 weeks early, you just get to go fucking exercise for 3 weeks. So I went to well, this is kind of a sad part of it, but
his son went to a different boot camp.
Oh, okay. So I thought I was going for 2 years, right?
Yeah.
So I go down to Santa Barbara, which is where Lompoc is. I think I'm going for 2 years. I'm in a hotel, just fucking crying my eyes out. I'm calling my girlfriend. She's like, oh, it's going to be fine. Don't worry about it, yada, yada. I'm just a mess, right? Like, when I'm going down to Lompoc, I don't have any luggage because I'm going to jail. And so when I get on the flight, they're like, hey, you don't have any luggage. That's weird. And this is after September 11th, blah, blah, blah. Now, keep in mind, I've flown a bunch of times past September 11th with like, $40,000, $50,000 in my pockets. I've been searched by TSA, no problem. When I get to going to Santa Barbara with no luggage, they're like, throwing this big fit about it. Like, oh,
Yeah,
why
you
don't you
come
have any
with us,
luggage with
buddy.
you? You know, like that's weird. Like, you know, most people have luggage with them. I'm like, hey man, like I'm fucking going to jail. Like, they're like trying to beat it out.
Why
of
you
me.
got to
I'm like,
make this worse?
So I get to the hotel, like the whole thing it's a mess. Like I'm feeling so sorry for myself. Like, you know, in retrospect, like realistically, when you go to prison, like everybody else suffers way more than you do. Like your family, your girlfriend, your mom, everybody is like just so worried
fish.
about you. Like, your fish, which he died while I was gone. My cat.
Say, God damn it, John.
My cat went missing. There was all kinds of shit. Anyway, so my girlfriend did a good job. But anyways, she lost my fish and my cat.
Damn it.
So I'm in the hotel. I'm a fucking mess.
I just fucking choked myself.
The next day, you know, I have to report by like 10 a.m. I'm like trying to stretch it to the end. I'm drinking fucking beer on the way in. Like, I'm trying to have a good, you know, whatever.
Smoking, drinking.
So I get to the federal facility and it's, you know, it's just a gate, right? So you got to go up to the gate and go like,
you knock?
hey, I'm here to self-report. And they go, oh, okay, cool. Come on in.
By the way, I'm drunk as fuck.
Tears in my eyes the whole time from the fucking cab, right? So,
Sir, why is there mascara running down your
yeah,
face?
exactly. So I get in there and I'm sitting with a guy, and I'll never forget this. And he was 18, I think I was 21, and he was there for methamphetamine distribution, and he got 45 years in prison.
Holy shit.
And at 8, you know, he was 18 years old, and he was scared too, and I was scared as well.
Oh.
He'd been transferred in, like not on a self-report, obviously.
No.
And he was like, "Oh, well, hey, you know, what are you in here for?" Because we were both young guys, and he was like, "I go, oh, I'm here for marijuana distribution." And he was like, "Oh, okay. Well, how long did you get?" And I said 2 years, and he said, "Well, that's not too bad. I got 45." And at first, I thought he was meaning 45 months, and I was like. And at 45 months, I was like, oh my, it was like gut wrenching. You know, I was like, oh my God, dude, like this is so long.
Yeah.
And then he said, no, it's 45 years. Jesus. I went to the box. And when you're in jail, like going to the box means you went to trial, right? So I don't know who his lawyer or whoever that told him that he should go to trial.
I was going to say somebody fucked that guy.
Somebody fucked him, you know, and I'm sure it was a situation where if he had told on somebody, he would have gotten less time, XYZ, etc. But 45 fucking years. And Lompoc Federal Prison, there's multiple camps, right? So you have, at the time, you had a boot camp, a low, a medium, and a high. And he was going to the high because he had 45 years. And so...
He's in with the fucking degenerates.
Yeah, murderers and the whole 9 yards. And so they were prepping him for going in and telling him what he had to do. But they were like kind of talking to both of us at the same time. And like...
You're like, are we going to the same spot? Fuck.
Bro, if they would have had a camera on me, I was just like, oh my God, like this thing is so much worse than I thought it was going to be. And
oh, I bet. Yeah.
Keep in mind, like I didn't know I was going to boot camp. So I called Leah, my girlfriend, and told her like, hey, you know,
Speaking of a ride or die, by the way.
She is. She's a great lady. Like she has been with me forever, through thick and thin. You know, the whole 9 yards. She's a great person.
Yeah.
But so they separate us, and I go into a different cell, and he says, hey, you got to shave your head. And I was like, what the fuck? I'm in like a white power camp already. And he was like, no. You know,
it's like, this is the only way you're going to fit in, man. Just do it.
And keep in mind, like, I'm like the same size I am now, but I'm 21 years old. So I'm like 290 pounds, you know, 6'2". A thick boy.
You were skinnier then.
No, I don't think so. Anyways, I was a thick boy. So they're like, hey, you know, get tough. Like, they're going to, you know, talk shit to you, whatever. And I was like, oh, whatever. Like, who are these people that are going to talk shit to me? And they're like, Mexicans. And I was like, oh, fuck, shit. Here we go. I love Mexicans. Like, I'm a great, you know, whatever. So
I just was at Cancun.
So they tell me about an hour later, like, hey, you're going to the boot camp. And at the time, I was like...
Because you got denied going in. You didn't realize
They had no, like... There was no, like, yes, no. It was just like, hey, we made a recommendation, but there's no...
Here's where
like
you're going.
affirmation
Good
that
luck.
you're going. So I thought I was going for 2 years. And so I get into the cell, shave your head, and they're like, okay, here's the deal. If you go to boot camp and yours doesn't start for 6 weeks, and I was like, fuck, okay. So if you make it through 6 months of boot camp, you have 5 months of halfway house, and then you'll go home, and then, you'll serve the rest of your sentence on a halfway house. And I was like, okay, great. Like, I'm fucking stoked about it. But at the same time, I'm like nervous that it's a boot camp,
I don't know what
right?
the fuck's going on.
Yeah. So I shave my head.
Because if you got the yes or no, you can at least prepare yourself.
Yeah, but no preparation. Before that, I was fucking drinking strawberry cheesequakes, drinking beer, like fucking just getting fucked up because I thought I was just sitting in the fucking cell for 2 years. So I was Dairy Queening it up, double big gulps, and smoking a hookah and having a great time. Like, I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna have a great time before I go. Like, no lung capacity, I'm fat as fuck. Like, I go do the thing.
Nobody's gonna want me.
No, so I get in there and they're like, oh, hey, you're the first person in on this new team that's going in for the boot camp. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, that'll be rad. Like, I'll get to pick my own bed or whatever. Like, no, it was like, hey, you get to be a fucking boot camp bitch for 6 weeks. That doesn't count for any of your fucking time. And then you still have 6 months after that.
Oh.
Which in the end was great because I was super fat. I wasn't in shape, blah, blah, blah. Like, the first day, they kicked the shit out of me. We went on a run for like 7 miles. I had a fucking shirt wrapped around my head because I was just sweating. It was just crazy. It was the most physical exertion I had had in my entire life in the very first day. And I remember there was a drill sergeant. So there was 4 teams within boot camp, and there was like each one of them had been a drill sergeant in the military prior, and now they were prison officials. And so they, they were assholes to you, like on purpose. And so it was just like being in, now that I've met a lot of people from the military, they're like, oh, it sounds just like military boot camp. But it was like, hey, you're fat as fuck, like bend at the waist, like all these, get some fries with that milkshake, all these different things that they were like, knocking you down on it. But basically what it was, do you want to do this boot camp for 6 months or do you want to go to prison for 2 years? And so I was like, well, obviously I want to go to this boot camp.
Yeah.
At the time, as Josh had mentioned earlier in the segment, I was very smart. I'd always gotten by on just natural ability for smarts, but I was a fucking cocksucker. Like, I didn't listen to authority. I didn't give a shit about what anybody said. I thought I was smarter than everybody else.
You were smarter than most people.
Well, maybe, but I had no life experience, right?
Yeah.
So everybody that knew me as an adult, that when I was a kid, essentially thought that I was an asshole because I thought that I was smarter than everybody else.
Right.
Being in that boot camp process really did completely change my life. Like, it was a thing of like, you just have to persevere, right? So it's just like every day it's wake up at 5 a.m., start running. You run for 2 miles in the morning around the track, and then you go do this and you do that. You do programming. You got to do fucking, tie your boots, shine your boots, do this, make your bed right, whatever. And it was like completely different than my whole life. Like,
right.
You would make your bed in the morning, and the drill sergeant would come by, and your bed could be fucking perfect. And they would walk by, and they'd just tear your entire a bed off the whole bunk and be like, oh, this is fucking bullshit, blah, blah, blah. You had to fold your t-shirts in 8x8 squares. You had to fold your underwear. Like, everything was just like the military in the sense that it was like, it was a drive to be perfect that you couldn't achieve. And when you didn't achieve it, they would fuck you over on it, right? So,
but they make you that much stronger mentally.
But mentally, it was such a huge process for me because there was all these guys that were at the boot camp. There was, like 300 guys at the boot camp. And they were all at different stages within the boot camp. So you had guys that were, fat like me when they started, and they had lost a bunch of weight, and they were like the, kind of the kings of the boot camp in the sense of like, they lost a bunch of weight, they're running now, they're doing this, they're doing that, and they would come up to me at the end of the night, like, hey, just keep pushing, you'll make it. And so it was like this big group of, initially when you first start, everybody's an asshole to you, they're calling you names and whatever. You're afraid to take a shower. You've never taken a shower with 300 dudes before, and all of a sudden you got to be in this like cattle tunnel of showers. I had that 6 weeks to prepare, which was honestly very good for me, because if I didn't have it, I probably would have quit and then given up on it. And so since I had that 6 weeks to prepare, I made it through just fine. Like I made a bunch of good friends from it. Like everything was great. But
And to go through, like, you don't make it through, you go back to your normal sentence.
yeah, exactly. It's like you're
There's
going to jail.
no-
Like, and it's
yeah.
not, there's no like time served or nothing.
No.
It's like,
You're
hey,
fucked. You
you've
start
been here
over.
for 6 months. If you fuck up, you're going back to jail and you've had 6 months in. So
Yeah. You still got your 18
so-
months left to serve. Good luck.
exactly. And
Yeah.
if anybody doesn't know, like at least up until recently, federal prison is you do every day that you're sentenced to up until 54 days a year of good time. So,
Right.
2 years is essentially 20 months in federal
Yeah.
prison.
Yeah.
So I did that. Everything was great. My wife was my girlfriend then, came and picked me up. We went home. I was in the greatest shape of my life. I was super skinny. I started working in a heating company, which kind of got me into what I'm doing now. But I was drinking a ton of water, like just powering water, just over and over and over again, because I drank so much water before. And you and Tristan were there too. And so
Yep.
like I wasn't fucking around. I wasn't doing
Nope.
anything wrong. Like everything was great. Well, this lady at the
I remember
halfway
this
house
time, like,
was a
really well.
fucking cunt,
Yeah.
and she was just on my ass all the time because she thought that, and I probably did. Like looking back, like she thought that I thought I was better than the other people within the halfway house, and I was like, yeah, no shit. Like I fucking moved weed. I wasn't a methamphetamine addict or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
So
As a businessman.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like this is all money. This had nothing to do with.
I
being
was
a drug
doing
addict.
normal shit. I wasn't, yeah.
So, anyways, I'm working at a heating company. I'm working from 5 a.m. to like 6 p.m., like, 11, 12, 13 hours. And they had a limit. And so the thing at the halfway house is no matter how much money you made, you had to pay 25% to the halfway house. Well, at the halfway house, I was like, well, I want to get out to my apartment because my girlfriend lives in an apartment. I want to get out there. And so they would give me weekend passes. Well, eventually they started being weird about the weekend passes. Hey, like you can't go this, you can't do that. And I was like,
Because they're not getting paid enough.
So, come one day at work, I'm fucking doing my thing. I get a phone call from the halfway house. Hey, we want to come talk to you. And I was like, that's weird. Why would you come to come to my work? Like I've already told you it's weird when you come to my work, from the halfway house. And so they come to my work. I'd called my girlfriend. I was like, hey, something's up, something's going on. So she came to my work and she's waiting there, and I'm like talking to her, and the U.S. Marshals show up, and I'm like, what the fuck?
no
And so U.S. Marshals come talk to me, and like beyond all the movie shit and all that, like the U.S. Marshals are about the most respectful people that I've ever dealt with in the federal government. They're there to do a job. They don't have anything bullshit. They're not trying to be a dick to you or whatever. And the guy comes
But
up
it's
to me and
still
says,
no joke.
yeah. So he goes
Like,
hey, so you have a violation. And I said, oh, what's the violation? He said, oh, well, they think you're diluting your UAs. And I was like, okay, well, if they think I'm diluting my UAs, there's a process within the Bureau of Prisons handbook that says you have to do X, Y, and Z. And he says, well, unfortunately, I can't do that for you. All I have is I have a warrant for your arrest. And so I'm like, oh, fuck, okay.
yeah.
So they pick me up. I go to Spokane County Jail for 8 weeks.
Oh, shit.
And I'm waiting. I'm like, hey, man, I'll take a hair follicle test.
Yeah.
I'll do a drug test, do whatever. None of that. So
I remember all that, like specifically where you're like, seriously, just fucking do a hair follicle test. You guys think that you got me on something?
Like,
do it.
fucking do it. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
of course, they wouldn't do that. So they're like, no, we won't do that. We won't do that. Well, so I end up getting found guilty of diluting a UA, which is bullshit, but at the same time, it is what it is. So I do 8 weeks at Spokane County Jail. I do like another 5 months or so in other county jails, moving from Spokane to Seattle. So if anybody doesn't know, it's about 300 miles. And so they're essentially moving you like 60 miles at a time, just more jails over and over and over again. So I go to,
Which makes it super easy for your girlfriend.
yeah, nobody can help you.
wife
Like,
that
yeah,
like can't keep track of even where you're at next.
they don't know where you're at. They can't come visit
Yeah.
you. There's no money.
Yeah.
Like you have like
Nothing.
So I ended up going to Tri-Cities Jail, which is Benton County Jail. And so Benton County has a program which is really great where they serve you essentially just as much food to keep you alive as what you need.
Oh.
And so I'd already lost a bunch of weight being in boot camp, but I get to Benton County Jail, and I'm 6'2". I was probably 205, 210 at the time. I get all the way down to 169 being
Holy
at Benton County
shit.
Jail. And so I was there for like another 2.5 months, 3 months. I go to Yakima County Jail for a few days, and then finally to Federal Detention Center in Seattle. When I get to the Federal Detention Center, I'm like, oh my God, thank God I'm back in federal custody. Like, it's a weird thing to say, but it's like you have a pillow, you have a mattress, like there's not a bunch of
You got normal shit. There's not the fucking degenerates.
yeah,
that are
and
just,
so like there's no people fighting, whatever. And this is what I'm thinking on the way in. So first day I get into my cell in SeaTac, and I'm with a guy named Derek. Everybody calls him D. He's a black guy, big black guy. And all these white guys are like, oh, you can't stay there anymore. Like that's, against the rules, whatever. I'm like, I've never been in like a real prison situation where there's like a racial line, because all
I
the
didn't
time
have
I've
a choice
done-
here, bud. This
yeah,
is where
it's
they
like,
sent me.
this is where they sent me, but
Yeah.
also like in all my other jail time, this has been what I've done. So first day, he's like, whatever. So this, that, and the other. The white guys bring me like new clothes, new whatever. I'm fucking dressed to the hilt, and I'm standing outside, and my bunkie, this black guy Derek, is like, hey, get back in the cell. I'm sorry. Get back in the cell. Shit's about to pop off. I'm like, oh, what the fuck's happening? And there's a pool table right outside of our room. We're on the base level, like the number 1 level. And there's a pool table right outside.
Which seems like the most dangerous fucking thing ever to have in prison, by
But
the
it
way.
also seems cool at
It
the
is
time.
cool, but like pool
sure, but
balls,
there's-
pool cues.
Those are-
Like,
So I see this Hispanic fella, and he's got a sock wrapped around his wrist
Oh.
with a cue ball or a pool ball
Yeah.
in the sock that's also tied off in a knot. And he's just swinging at this dude. And he's, causing a shit ton of damage to this guy.
yeah.
Well,
There's
this
blood
guy's
everywhere.
And
head
this is
face.
your
Yeah.
first day or two in.
Very first day. Like I'm
Yeah.
there for like 6 hours. And he's swinging on this guy, and they're fucking going at it and whatever. And me and my cellmate, Derek, are in the cell, and he's got the door closed, and he's like, hey, like just stay in here and he was a really cool guy. He was like, hey, the guards are going to come. They're going to check us. They're going to make sure we weren't involved in the fight, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So I'm there in that lower tier for like the next month or two. I make friends with all the black guys. Like we're having a great time. I'm watching hip hop TV or MTV hip hop or something like that.
You're like,
back
how
in
do
the
you know
day.
all this shit? You're like, I love this
was
shit.
it Yo MTV Raps?
It wasn't MTV Raps, but it was something like that, like hip hop TV or something. But and at the time, as a 22-year-old, I was like very engulfed in.
I know all of this shit.
Yeah, I was like, I know all these songs, I know everything. Like I'm having a great time, blah blah blah. But I'm getting all this static from the white guys. Like, oh, you shouldn't be hanging out with those guys, blah blah blah. I go down to visiting, like the white guys are fucking staring at me, like, why the fuck are you hanging out with those black guys? And it wasn't because I was like this super multicultural guy. It was just like, oh, like we both like the same music, like we're having a good time.
We're having a great time, and
we
this guy
watched-
looked out for me
Yeah, I was like,
day
we-
one.
Yeah.
We
I don't
watch
want to
movies
piss my
together,
roommate
like-
off.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, anyways, I get moved upstairs. So once you get moved upstairs, it's essentially like a not a promotion by any means, but it's like a almost like a sentence. Like, hey, now you're gonna stay here for the next XYZ amount of time. So I'm there for like 3 months. I make great friends with the Hispanic guy. Like same thing. Like, but now there's no black guys upstairs. It's just white guys and Hispanic guys. I'm doing my thing. I'm raking poker games, being the dealer at a poker table,
Yeah.
making a bunch of money doing poker. I'm having a good time.
By money, you mean making top ramen and
Top
fucking-
ramen and having Mexican guys iron my clothes
Yeah.
super tight. So when I go down to see my mom and my girlfriend, I got the shit just creased up.
Did you have a crease right in the front of your pants?
So what I had was a smock. essentially.
Hispanics like to have creases in the front of the pants.
Okay, so I had a smock and then like canvas pants, right? And the smock had creases on the shoulders and then creases down the front. and they were in line with the creases on your pants.
Oh.
And then you had a cuff on your pant and then creased super hard. And so what they would do is they would take potatoes from the kitchen and they would boil the potatoes and they'd use that as
they starch you up.
for
No
your
shit.
creases. And so it was great. Like you trade them 3 soups, they'd make you a full soup. So like I was balling. I was like, oh man, this is great. Like, you know, for the situation, I was like, whatever. And I kind of accepted the fact that like I had lost this appeal for the water thing and whatever.
There was only so much you could do.
Only so much you could do. Like I was almost
that's
done
a
with my
losing fight.
sentence,
Yeah.
whatever.
But now I'm starched up.
I'm starched up. I go see my girlfriend. I'm
starched
like,
up. These
fucking
guys are
creased as
fucking
shit.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You know, you gotta get naked every 2 days to go see your family to get to strip down.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I
All
go
right,
down.
let me see your butthole again.
Yeah, you want to see it? Yeah. So I go downstairs, or I'm doing my thing, whatever. So one day, we had this guard, and he was like I'd say mixed race guy, maybe a black white kind of thing. And he was a really nice guard. He was always like, the thing with federal prison is like the guards are like kind of halfway in, halfway out. Like they're cool with you in the sense of like they want to know all the things that you're into.
Yeah.
But they're also still a guard, so you gotta like, you know, kind of play it cool a little bit with them. And so one day he goes, "Hey, I got this letter for you." I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, I go, "Is it for my girlfriend?" And I was like, "Why would she send me a letter? She comes to see me every couple of days." So I take this letter and it's opened already, which is like they've
Because she was living over there.
Yeah, she was
at
in
this
Seattle,
point,
so-
right? Yeah.
it was a letter that had been processed by the facility because it was cut all the way on the top, and you know they read your mail. So I go in there, I'm looking at it, and I'm like, "The fuck is this?" So within like 3 or 4 days of me being sent to SeaTac, I'd gotten my appeal approved by the Bureau of Prisons that said that I was not guilty for this diluting the UA thing.
How long has this been now?
This has been like 4 months.
Oh.
So I've been sitting there for 4 months. So I'm like, what the fuck? And he's like, yeah, they're saying that this was stuck in here. He's like, but we search this every night for contraband or whatever. This wasn't here. And I was like, that's fucked up. So the next day I'm walking out and the counselor guy who's like your whatever, like he tells you whatever you got going on.
Yeah.
So essentially you have like these 100, like you have a series shots, so what they call them. And so it's like you get a 300 or 200 or 100 series shot and it takes away your good time. And so I'd gotten a 100 series shot, which was the top level shot saying that you had falsified a UA, right? So, you know, they're saying like you're the baddest.
That's
person,
the
I guess.
worst you
Yeah,
can
the worst
do.
you can do.
Yeah.
So they'd taken away all my good time for 2 years. And so so he's like, "Oh yeah, hey, I heard you won your appeal." And I was like, "Yeah, how'd you hear that?" And he was like, "Oh, I just, you know, heard it from one of the guards." And I was like, "Yeah, it's weird because that letter got sent to me 4 months ago. And I would imagine that you have records on your thing that tell you that I was found not guilty." And he was like, "Oh, well, you know, prison paperwork, blah, blah, blah." You know, so, so then he comes to me, he goes like, "Hey, so good news is we're going to put you out back on halfway house." And I was like, "Oh, really? Well, how long is that?" And he was like, "Oh, you have 3 months of halfway house." And I was like, "Well, fuck it, ride me out. Like, I'm not going to go through 3 months of halfway house
To get sent back again.
Yeah.
Well, and plus I got to pay you 25%. Like, this
Yeah.
bullshit.
Yeah,
It's like, I'll just
exactly.
sit here.
And
with
you
my-
already had a real shitty experience
and I was like, I'll
with
sit
the
here
one
with
you
my
were
buddies
in.
for 25 for the next 3 months.
Yeah.
So I wrote it out. Like, everything was good. So they come out and they're like, "Okay, well, this is your last day, blah, blah, blah." So I go to leave. My girlfriend picks me up. They're like, "Oh, well, hey, you have to go to this halfway house to be released because you had originally been sentenced to a halfway house." And I was like, "That's fucking weird." So I have to go to this halfway house in downtown Seattle, which is full of like just straight drug addicts. I'm talking like zombies everywhere.
This isn't Coeur d'Alene's halfway
No,
house.
not
This
at
is
all.
like-
Straight crack addicts. So I get there and they're doing the process and like, "Oh yeah, hey, tomorrow you have this like personal finance class, you have this, you have that, and the next day you have this." And then I was
there's
like,
no tomorrow.
I was like, "Oh no, I'm fucking gone tomorrow."
Yeah.
And they're like,
I did
"No?"
my time.
And so they go, "Oh, well, you have public law." And I was like, "What the fuck is public law?" So it's a 6-month in addition sentence. And I was like, "No fucking way. Like, I'm not doing that." So anyways, I called the prison and all the people. I'm like, "Hey, listen, like, I'm letting you know right now, like, if I don't get released tomorrow, I'm fucking out. Like, you can come catch me.
Yeah.
So it took a while, like at 1 o'clock in the afternoon or something. They finally figured it out, and they're like, okay, you're good. So that was essentially the end of it. I had federal probation for 3 years, which I ended up only doing a year on.
Yeah.
And then it was over. So.
But yeah, that part of the halfway house, your wife's sitting there going, "What in the fuck did we just sign back up for?"
And that's all I was saying.
Because this is how we got fucked to begin with.
Yeah.
Yeah,
At the beginning.
Realistically, like I was saying, like when you go to prison, like, or anybody goes to prison, it's totally the family that suffers from that.
Yeah.
Like it's not you. Like you're there and you're like, oh man, this sucks.
You're just doing different shit.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch TV for the next
Yeah.
3 years. But
You might run a little bit.
well, walking around the fucking tier.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a break real quick.
All right. We'll be right back.
All right, so
All right. So we're back.
We're back.
you're in Washington, somewhere in Seattle,
Oh, they were in Seattle.
Yeah.
yeah.
So you get everything figured out.
Get
and
everything
they
figured out.
release you.
They release me. I do my own thing. I do my probation. I start back at
Was your probation there the whole time?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was short. It was like, so I get released. I go meet with my probation officer. He says, okay, well, hey, 75 or 80% of my people, excuse me, causing me like 75 or 80% of my problems. If you're not one of those guys, I won't even bother you. I was like, oh, no problem.
Perfect.
I was like, I'm not that guy, so whatever. So I'm working,
And then he looks at your thing and he's like, huh,
yeah.
well, you
Maybe.
diluted a test.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe you are that guy.
So I have to give, as much as I don't want to, my wife credit. So I
He's
I
a
get
dick,
this,
Leah.
yeah,
Speaking of
exactly.
parts we're cutting out.
So I get this job interview, right? And it's for a lead generator at a heating company. And I'd already worked at a heating company, so I was like, oh, this will be easy. Well, like, when I get out of prison, like, I'm, like, super anxious, right? Like, I have all these, like, I haven't been around a lot of people. Even on the way back from prison, I was like, oh, man, I don't feel right. Like, there's too many people here, et cetera, et cetera. And she's like, oh, just go.
You're
just
used
go.
to the same folks.
Yeah, the
every
same
day.
100 people every day.
Yeah.
And so when you get around a bunch of people, I'm like, oh man, I don't know what to do. Like I'm kind of like have this fight or flight all the time. Like I'm sitting with my back against the wall, et cetera, et cetera. So anyways, I go to the interview and I chicken out. I bitch out of it. And so I call the guy. I'm like, oh man, I can't make it. Or, whatever, like traffic
Stupid
or
excuse.
something stupid, right?
Yeah.
And my wife is like, my girlfriend at the time, she was like, essentially, you're being a bitch. Like,
Suck
go
it
to this
up
fucking
and
interview.
go to the interview
blah,
and
blah,
get it
blah.
done.
Like, you have to get a fucking job. Like, it's part of your probation, yada, yada. So I go back the next day and I get the job. And so the guy is like, hey, running through the whole thing. And he's like, oh, are you on probation, parole, whatever? And I'm like,
It's like it's
well,
HVAC, isn't
yeah.
it?
I'm like,
Long
HVAC.
story. Like,
fucking
aren't we
relax
all?
about
Come
this.
on, man.
Exactly. So I was like, yes, I am. And so I tell him, kind of like the cliff notes of the story. And he's like, oh, it's no problem. You're going to be at a Home Depot doing lead generation. And so not a big deal. I was like, all right, cool. So I go and do lead generation for, I don't know, probably like 2 or 3 months. And essentially all that is you're sitting at the Home Depot barking at people like, oh, hey, Mr. Smith, you ever thought about getting a new air conditioner heat pump? And they're like, no, go fuck yourself. I'm here for paint. You're like, nice. All right.
Solid, bud. See you later.
So I do that and I'm like, fairly successful at it for whatever that position is. And I'm getting people in the door and
You
whatnot.
get one out of every 2,000 people,
Yeah, exactly.
and you're doing well.
But you
Yeah,
could probably
it's-
sell the shit out of AC being a ginger and all.
Yeah, obviously,
Like,
it's
look
hot.
at me. It's hot
So-
as fuck out.
But we're working at 2 different Home Depots. We got like one in like the middle of Seattle and one out in Redmond, Washington, which is essentially like white moms, getting paint for projects. So
Yeah.
so when I'm going back and forth, I'm doing okay, whatever. And so once a week we have this meeting where everybody comes to the office. We have like a sales meeting with lead generators and the sales guys and the this and the that. Well, I go to the meeting one week and they say, hey, so this guy, Becky, sorry, he has a drinking problem. I'm like, wow, that makes two of us. Anyway, so he says, hey, he's going to be out of the office for a little bit. Would you like to come in and do the sales? And I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. So I come in, I get the whole rundown from the other sales guy for a couple days. I go out on my own and I sell the first 2 jobs I go to. I'm like, oh, I'm the fucking best. Turns out I didn't put any labor on any of those first 2 jobs. And so
you got
like,
to eat all that.
yeah, they're like, sick, you don't make any money. And I was like, okay, well, whatever. I got the sale, right? So so back to my wife. She was right. I was good at this job. I started doing this. I start doing a bunch of in-home sales, and I'm really good at it, and I'm making my way through it. They're going through all these salespeople left and right. They can't keep anybody. I'm still the guy, and part of the reason I'm the guy is because I'm afraid to leave, right? Because
And you don't have any neck tattoos.
no neck tattoos. And in Seattle at the time, it was like big.com, whatever, and like the other guys weren't
You're
like,
hitting the big money guys.
yeah, and they
at
weren't
that
like
point.
hip to email or anything like that. And I was like, all night emailing these people back on these little tips and tricks and all the other bullshit about HVAC. And so I was successful. And so eventually it became where I was the only sales guy there. And at the company that I was working at, it was like I wouldn't say it was like a high pressure deal, but it was certainly like a high dollar amount, low volume. And so it was like, hey, we're going to sell this furnace for 2 or 3 times as much as anybody else, but we're going to make a shit ton of money when we do it. And so I did that for 10 years, and I was just struggling all the time with it. And it wasn't...
That guy was just pushing advertising at the end of the day, basically.
It wasn't even really advertising. What it was like, hey, if you're going to go do 5 sales calls in Seattle, you might sell 1, but you're going to sell them for a huge markup on it, and you're going to make a bunch of money. And so I was like...
We don't want to do 100 jobs a day.
They don't. Like they had no intention of doing, more than 2 jobs a day. And as a sales guy, and I had not been a sales guy before that, I didn't really know. And so I was like, oh, well, this kind of sucks, but whatever. So I was doing that, but I was learning a lot because I was going to a ton of job sites on the jobs that I did sell, and the installers that I was with would show me like, hey, you got to look out for this, you got to look out for that. Like, hey, look, all these different things about the install, which I didn't know prior to working there. So I did that for 10 years in Seattle. And then my buddy, he says, hey, I'm working at this heating company in Hayden, Idaho. And I was like, well, that would be cool. Like, in the sense of like, I come back to visit you and I come back to visit all my friends. Like every part of my vacation was spent coming back to visit my wife's family or my friends or whatever. So, and he'd been working as a service technician there. I come back and I start working as a sales guy, and I come back and I'm like on fucking fire. Like I'm just selling everything I can. Like, no one has seen this level of like, just, getting after it, like doing 8-10 sales calls a day. Like I'm just fucking.
Well, you were used to working that shit in Seattle.
Yeah, no, I was. I was used to working in the hours.
Got it. Yeah.
And the hours in Seattle was like maybe 4 or 5 sales calls a day.
And then you switched to here where they can do the volume.
The volume was just nuts. Like I was just going.
Yeah.
And so I grew that company in Hayden from 2 installers to probably 10 installers. So I left.
Yeah.
So I went to my buddy's company who he was doing fairly well. And I started being a sales guy there. And I just grew that as much as possible.
Yeah.
And you've helped create a fucking mogul.
Yeah, it's a monster.
Oh, it is.
Like, so
for sure.
So I'll give all that credit to him as far as the.
I wouldn't give all of it to him.
Yeah, you deserve a lot of that credit.
I would give a lot.
You
of
fucking ramped that right up with it.
I did, but
it was all at the same time.
But I would say that
he had the vision.
Do you feel this heat we have in here?
Yeah, it's nice.
It's you.
Oh, okay.
That's you.
Well, I would say that
he had the vision of what he wanted to do, and you.
Yeah, so he had the vision of going like, hey, like we could become the, I don't know, say Walmart or something like that of HVAC, and he ran with it, and he was ready to go with it, and he was willing to.
He was willing to leverage himself and do it.
Yes.
Because I mean, we've talked about this before. His grandpa was my appliance repairman.
Yes.
And so I'd have an issue. I'd call, and I'd get the voicemail like, "Hey, you've reached Becky, and we're open Tuesdays and Wednesdays.
Exactly.
So let us know what you want, and we'll call you back." And then he'd show up. He was seriously the slick back hair from the 50s.
Yeah.
The rolled up, it wasn't a cigarette pack in his sleeve, but it was just about like that. And he came in with his toolbox.
Even now, he's like an 85-year-old.
Yeah.
Uses a Bowflex. Like he's a fucking gangster.
He's awesome,
old man. So
And I wouldn't walk on his property.
no, me neither. So, but I think what my buddy did with that company was say, okay, I have a little bit of a name because it's already an established component in the area, and then I'm gonna broaden it from an appliance repair company to an HVAC company, and that fucking went gangbusters. And when it did, it was, it started out like it was a very low cost company that would do anything, and then eventually, as it went along, it was like, oh hey, like we're getting caught by inspectors, we're getting caught by these people, we're getting caught by these people. We have to increase our prices to maintain this, and even within that, like we're still able to provide the best value for the dollar that people are
He
spending.
rolled with those punches all the way through it and
Yeah, all
just
the way through,
changed all the way through.
And I will say, like for him, like as much as I love the guy as a person, like he has maintained being able to provide people with a really good price for something, and at the same time a really good quality. And the quality is vacillated, right? Like you have, anytime you're in construction, you have like, you're only as good as the people that are working for you.
Yeah.
And so you have times where you have like a bunch of, not great people that work for you, and you have to go fix a bunch of their shit that they do. And then you have guys that are really good, and you have to, you can kind of grow with those people. But I will say that overall, like he has made a really good value for what it is now. And if you look at other HVAC companies in the area, you have the same kind of quality of equipment going for twice as much as what we sell it for.
Yeah.
And you have these, and the biggest thing that's come into our area is these consolidators, right? So these huge national corporations of investment companies have come into these service groups, and they've said, oh, hey, well, John, you own this ABC mechanical company. We'll pay you $20 million for this company. Then we get all your people. Well, then they come in and they go, oh, well, anything that you did for $5,000 before, it's all $7,000 now, and we're going to cut all of the corners that we can to make it worth our money. So the problem has become is that we have this huge influx of cash from outside investors that are coming in to try to like capitalize on the market. The vast kind of change that's happened here with us locally is you don't have local companies anymore. So I think that's the biggest thing is that the guy that I work for has kept it local.
Yeah.
He's paid everybody really well to stay on. The guys.
That's the only way to keep them around here.
Yeah, exactly.
At the end
Because
of the day. Yeah.
realistically, these guys could go start their own company and make $100,000 being their own boss, but they have to hustle all this shit. So like
And most of them won't do it.
Yeah.
All right. Before we wrap this up, I do want to hit one other thing.
okay.
So, great job getting out, being a successful person.
Thank you.
You did it though. I mean,
did.
honestly, when you look at it, you go, I fucked up. I went through my shit. I got out. You're always been a normal dude to me, but like you went through your shit, you got through it, and you made it.
And you're successful now.
Yes, but I would say that to be like perfectly honest, like if I didn't have that boot camp experience to get myself kicked into gear, I'd probably be a fucking loser sitting in someone's basement. Probably, my
Wait a
mom
minute.
or my
But you're sitting in my basement.
Oh, okay. Well, not with his background, but no. Look, I see.
No,
it.
but legitimately, yeah.
Yeah, like I see a
you
ton
learned
of-
from it, and you fucking did it.
I see a ton of young kids that come through our company, and they don't have a lot of direction. They haven't had like a big like, hey, this is what we're gonna do every day. And as much as it frustrates me, I do feel a little bit like, oh, well, hey, like I was with that guy too.
Yeah.
But I also think like if you look at the overall like criminal whole world, if you don't have like a family base or like a good base to come back to, you're pretty fucked. So
Yeah.
my wife now, who was my girlfriend then, my mom,
She's a
my
fucking
dad,
saint,
they
by the way.
were very, very good people who saw more in me at the time than I saw in myself. And so they kept pushing me. You know, it was like a keep going, keep going. Like I said, like when I went to that interview and I didn't want to go, my wife was like, "Don't be a bitch, like go." My parents were the same way. They were like, "Hey, you have to keep going. Like you can't just stop. Like the fact that you made it out of jail is not a fucking goal. Like fuck you. Like keep going. You know, like
No.
Yeah.
So I do have to say, like, if anybody's going through any of that process, as far as like somebody who's been in jail, whatever, it's not just coming back. Like, you have to be able to support those people until they can move out on their own. So,
Yeah. Have that support system to go.
Yeah.
Fucking pick yourself up.
yeah,
Quit
it's
crying about it. It's over.
Well, the thing is,
And now it's not over. You're
thing
starting
is-
your life over.
yeah, and I would say like
Fucking do it.
it's not a race, right? Like it's
No.
not like a hey, I'm gonna hit this finish line and go. Like if you're gonna be a good person, and especially we're dudes, right? So you have family, you have kids, you have all this kind of shit that you have to keep going. Like if you're gonna be a successful person, you have to see the fact that it's not the next 2 years, it's the next 25 years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Well, and I think, I mean, you're one of the most successful people that is in my sphere of friends, and I think a lot of that has to do with obviously what you had to go through and what you learned from that.
Yeah.
And that's why you see kids that don't have to go through adversity that suck. They don't do shit, and then you see people that go through the shit. They go through the fire and they're successful.
Speaking of random things that happen in your life,
yeah.
what'd you drive to Coeur d'Alene this weekend?
Oh, yeah,
All right.
that's
So,
right.
I'm a big gambler, right? Like I always think like, oh man, I'm gonna be the guy that wins the lotto or Powerball or whatever. I've never won anything, right? Like,
Hey, by the way, where'd you get this from?
probably my father. I would say my father was a huge gambler.
Shout out,
like,
kid.
Yeah, my dad Ken was the gnarliest gambler. Like, I mean, realistically,
worked.
everybody else would say he was a deadbeat, but
No, he was not a deadbeat. Your dad's never been a deadbeat.
no, but he would fucking gamble his last dollar if it meant that he could make something of himself. So
And it worked a lot
it
of
did
the times.
a lot of times. Yeah, he made a lot of money. But
Yeah.
so I've always been like, when you follow Instagram or Facebook or whatever, I see all these like these giveaway things or whatever.
Yeah.
So one day I'm looking through Instagram and I see this very good looking lady and she's hawking this, not hawk to but this hawking, she's this giveaway for this big ass Suburban, right? And I'm like, oh my God, that Suburban's so great. That's everything I would ever do. Like,
But you've been watching this broad for a little while
Yeah,
before.
she's-
It wasn't just like
No,
a total pop-up.
no, she's
You'd been watching her before.
she's a beautiful lady.
Yeah.
I'm sure she's a great
And
person.
she works on diesels.
Yeah, she works on diesels. I'm
She's
into
got a
diesel
few
trucks.
layers that just like keep adding it up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's on the top of my layer cake as far as good looking
Sorry,
broad.
Leah.
She's younger than my wife, I guess. Whatever. Just happenstance. Anyways, but her boyfriend is this guy named Zach who is a car builder. She's a car builder. They've all done these car builders. Anyways, so they have this giveaway. Like, hey, go ahead and enter this giveaway. You could win this Suburban. And I'm like, oh my God, this Suburban's the best thing I've ever had. It's Suburban. It's got a Cummins diesel in it. It's got 1 ton.
And you were
running
talking
gear.
to the boys about building something.
I was talking about it, and I was like, if I could spend all the money and my wife wouldn't get mad at me, this
Yeah.
is what I would build.
Yeah.
And so I just kept following it, watching all the videos. And I kept telling my wife, oh my fucking God. Like, first of all, I'm in love with this lady.
Yeah.
Also, I'm in love with this truck.
Actually, I'm watching this for the truck.
Yeah, exactly. The lady has nothing to do with
She
it.
has nothing to do with that, but
But anyway, so they have their giveaway, and it's like, it's like all the other Instagram giveaways. Buy a sweatshirt, buy this, buy whatever, and you get X amount of points. So one day I'm sitting at work and I keep getting this Texas phone call. Texas. And I'm like, the fuck is calling me from Texas? I don't know anybody from Texas.
Yeah.
And so ignore. Well, my wife calls me, a few times. I keep ignoring because I'm busy.
Well, it's the middle of the day. You're working.
Yeah, I'm like, hey.
Yeah.
So she texts me, did you enter to win something? And I was like, yeah, I've entered to win 5 million things since whatever.
This sounds like a trap.
Exactly. So she's like, hey, well, these people are trying to call you. And I was like, oh, that's weird. I guess go ahead and call me. So she calls me. She 3 ways calls me. And I hear this southern voice. And I'm like, oh, my God. I hear her boyfriend talking. And I'm like, oh, my God, this is it. And she's like, oh, my wife, Leah, was like, oh, you won this Suburban. And I'm like, she's like, what is it? And I'm like, oh, it's just, nothing big.
Not a big deal.
So as they call, they make it a big production of it, whatever. Like, they have their own, like...
By the way, I'll throw up some pictures and some shout-outs to the giveaway, yeah.
So, she's a beautiful lady. Her dude's a great dude.
They have an awesome channel.
They have an awesome channel. Like, they do a ton of cool shit. They're doing, like, burnout competitions. They're all over Netflix, whatever. Anyway, so...
YouTube, not Netflix.
They have a Netflix show. Thank you.
Do they really?
Josh. Yes, sir. Anyways,
I haven't seen that one.
So, they contact me, and they're like, oh, you won this Suburban, blah, blah, blah. And so it was like right after fall, right? So I was like, oh, I'm making great money, blah, blah, blah. So she says, oh, well, you also won $5,000. And I was like, oh, well, I don't need the money. Go ahead and donate to somebody. And she was like, oh, that's so great. And she puts it all over Instagram, whatever. And so I start getting like 1 million followers from Instagram. And
which is fucking badass that you
it's cool.
Gave it like the I won this shit. I don't need that. Basically, they're giving you the cash to pay for your tax write-off.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And I was like, well, and I said, so my wife, when she sells real estate, and she goes and whatever, and every time she sells anything on a house, she gives like a big portion of her commission to the women's, like battered women's shelter in Coeur d'Alene. Yeah. She donates a ton of money and time and all that to the battered women's shelter. So I'm like, okay, great. So Lacey from Lacey and Zach, they donate their money. They do the whole thing. They're supposed to come up from Texas. They get stuck in a snowstorm. They can't come up, but they have a guy come up. This guy named Cap. He drives a truck up, and it was a great day. So it was like a great experience to win that truck. Like beyond all the other stuff, like it was just a cool experience. They donated the money to the Battered Women's Shelter. We did that with Leah, and it was good. It was a good thing.
Well, that's one of those where you're like,
awesome.
It's fucking real. When you see all the giveaway shit, and you're like, they got to be bullshitting this.
Yeah, no, for sure. And
then it comes in, and you're like, yep, it's fucking real.
And I would say for
they're not messing around.
Those two people, like they have. I would say they're not like the glitzy, glamoury, like Hollywood type people. But they're they definitely do what they do as far as like working on cars and all that. But they also like donate to their own charities and they do shit on their own. And so I would say that they're a good couple, as far as that goes. Yeah. As far as
it's cool to see when you go like, all right, they're selling a fuck ton of merch. Okay, that's why they're doing it.
And
great.
I don't know that.
But then at the end of the day, when you go, they're still giving back at the same time and doing everything else. It's like,
I would
that's
say
cool
too,
to
like
see.
for them, like realistically before, like, a year ago, like they were selling merch and they were doing their whole thing, but like, and I wouldn't say it's not me by any means, but they've blown up recently because they've done a bunch of other stuff, but, like they're real people making like real shit that they give away, and they also, sell whatever they do, but it's not like sweatshirt sales pay for a fucking store.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
They're not buying a Lambo off of their fucking sweatshirt
I think they're
sales.
Very down to earth people.
Yeah, that's cool.
Well, we'll be putting a clip of that in there.
Yeah, we're gonna we'll throw up some links to that.
We're gonna take a ride in that.
Oh yeah,
we are.
Of course, we can go for that.
Yeah, maybe tonight. Oh wait,
Who's driving?
We do not condone drinking and driving, so
Not
don't
me.
do that.
First of all, I have terrible motor skills as it goes, but if we're drinking, I'm not the guy. So. Not the guy to drive. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm the guy to drink, not to drive.
Yeah. I'll go, but I'm not driving.
What about John? I feel like you've taken off the last half hour. What's going on with you?
I'm listening.
Oh,
I'm absorbing.
what do you have to say?
He did. Honestly, I don't think John thought there was any chance you were going to tell your full story.
Well, John got it out of me.
I know, but I don't think he thought you were going to do it.
I didn't
He
think
usually
so.
pokes the bear and doesn't realize when the bear comes out.
I just want
Freaks
to
him
sit
out
and
a little
listen
bit.
there.
He just sits back.
Josh keeps on yapping over you. I just want to listen.
Oh,
Hey, you shut the fuck up.
I think he's done a good job, but I think you've done a better job
That makes sense.
at coaxing it out. I don't like to talk about it a lot because it has been a long time, and I think that the people who are involved in that have moved on from that part of their life.
You don't want to keep bringing it back up.
No, I mean it's fun at like, hey, we're drinking, we're having a good time. Like, look what I did back in the day, but at the same time, like it doesn't define any of the people that are, I guess, left.
No, of course not. But now, what is the record that you have had before tonight of your whole story? Do you have it on tape? Do you have it on video?
I've never told it on
Yeah.
tape.
This
I
is
have
what
told
you'll-
it to, obviously my wife.
Yeah.
And,
Well,
you know,
no, yeah. That's.
Yeah.
I mean,
But-
but to have it recorded, and that's why, like with my dad, with his whole experience, he's told a million people,
But he's never
we've
told
never
a million people the
documented it.
full story.
Yeah.
and we've never documented it.
But your
And-
dad's story is so amazing.
And no, it's awesome.
your dad's
But
story is great.
I don't want you to downplay what you experienced either.
You went through a lot of shit.
I did
Yeah.
go through a lot of shit, but I would
Yeah.
say that, like, and I hate like beating a dead horse and feeling like a weird like Danny Tanner moment, but realistically, like if I didn't have the people in my life that kept pushing me, like I literally would have been the smart guy working at a fucking AutoZone, being like, "Hey, do you have 4-wheel drive on that Blazer?" Or And I've met so many people in my life that were like amazingly smart people, but they never did anything with it.
Yeah.
And I would say that like
Right.
our school system is kind of set up for if you're smart, like you don't have to do anything. Like you just do your thing and move on, like because it's easy. Like you can just keep pushing you. I don't mean that as like a detriment to teachers or anything like that, but it's just it is what it is.
No, it is.
And I think
It's
that, like,
easy to get away with not doing a whole
yeah,
lot.
and you were a smart guy too, and
Well, I don't know about that, but
I
yeah.
wasn't with you in high school in the 40s, but you know, when you're in high school and you're a smart kid,
Fuck
like,
off. You're a fucking convicted felon, you fuck.
I am me and Donald Trump, bitch. But the thing is like when you're a smart kid in high school,
Go Donald Trump, by the way.
that there's no expectations really of you. You know what I mean? Like it's just like,
Yeah.
oh well, like
You just take the easy way out
yeah,
and
you
get
do
through
so
it.
good on school. Like,
Yeah.
hey, fucking, do what it is. But like, I had no work ethic at all. Like at all. If I was being really honest, before
Yeah.
I went to boot camp, like
And you discovered it. You discovered that, hey, you discovered the reason you should have it.
I think what I discovered was that there was like this insurmountable task, but if I just kept going, it would eventually get better. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like it was like I couldn't imagine myself at I'm there right now, which is unfortunate, but at 300 pounds, getting down to 160 pounds and making my way through this fucking program. But at the time, I was like, oh man, like this is an insurmountable task. I can't do it. But now I'm like, hey, if somebody come to me tomorrow and was like, hey, like you have to lose 100 pounds, I'm like, fuck yeah, give me a couple
Yeah.
months.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you could do it.
Like, which is, it's a different task, right? Like, it's one of those mental tasks where you're like, hey, like,
Yeah.
I can get through this if you give me enough time. I'll push through it.
All right.
Well,
Well, cheers,
Rhett,
fuckers.
All right, sir.
thanks, man.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks again, buddy.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate you coming on. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out for this. Again, like, subscribe, share it with your friends. We appreciate you.
I might do a shot of tequila
Oh.
with a pickleback
Oh, do it.
if Rhett will do one with me.
I'll probably drink a Miller Lite with you.
All right. I love
Cheers, everybody.